Good evening, fellow foxes. My name is Solaito, and today we are going to play some Clash Royale, and we're going to talk about a very specific subject, and it's going to be Elixir Advantage. Mastering this technique in Clash Royale will make you a much better player, because a lot of the game plays around this technique, and the one who is able to use it to his advantage will definitely or most likely win the battle. So Elixir Advantage is basically what the word tells it. Basically, you will gain an advantage in Elixir, and because you have more Elixir, you can deploy more troops. Now, how are you going to obtain that Elixir Advantage? That will be through placing efficient troops or playing efficient spells. And by doing so, you will gain more Elixir than your opponent, and your attacks will be much more devastating. So let's take a look at my cards to show some examples of what Elixir Advantage really means. Okay, so like the number one example is obviously the Prince. The Prince is a very annoying card to play against. It's this bad boy over here. And basically this guy will storm at your towers and then just wreck them if you don't do anything. But this bad boy has one really big downfall, is that it's pretty easy countered if your opponent knows what he's doing. There are quite a lot of counters against a Prince. And one of the most Elixir efficient counters is the skeletons. This card only costs 1. It's like the cheapest card in the game, and this 4 little skeletons can totally mess up a Prince attack. So if you take a look at them, they are really cheap. They don't do a whole lot, but guess what? They are enough to actually take down a Prince. So when a Prince is storming at your tower, you drop these 4 skeletons, and together with your tower, they will take care of that annoying Prince. Now, what will this result into? Well, basically, your opponent will have spent 5 elixir now. So now he's at 5 elixir, but you will only have spent 1 elixir, so now you are at 9 elixir. And now we have 4 Elixir Advantage basically, which can be used for your next attack. So for example, you could send a P.E.K.K.A. or something, basically, or a Hog Rider, and basically can prepare your next attack, and you will have more Elixir to invest in that attack. And so if you're a bit lucky and play it right, you will probably take down a tower, or at least do a bunch of damage against that tower. So what are some other great cards to build up an Elixir Advantage? Basically, each deck should contain certain cards to build up that Elixir Advantage, and then other cards should be like defensive cards or very offensive cards to make your push, which should be your winning condition basically. But so what are some very Elixir efficient card? And we're basically talking about the Zap. The Zap is extremely Elixir efficient. It only costs 2 Elixir, and it can, for example, a minion horde, it can take it down, but like you might need some help with your tower. But Zap is perfectly awesome to use against a minion horde or just regular minions. You can just totally use that against them. A Zap can also be used against a skeleton army, but that won't be able to completely take it down. A Zap can also be used against like these guys here, the Spear Goblins and the Goblins. If they are grouped together, they are a really good card against that too. So then you have arrows, and where are my arrows? They are right over here. These arrows are a great card. They do 202 area damage and have a radius of 4, which is quite big. So they can totally eliminate a skeleton army, which will result in 1 Elixir Advantage for you. They can also totally annihilate a minion horde. Like the minion horde is a very popular card, but so easily countered by arrows. So if you can time your arrows right and take down a minion horde, each and every time you do that, you have gained 2 elixir on your opponent. So it's a very great card to have in your deck. Arrows, very versatile, can be used against quite a lot of things. Basically, you want to use your arrows also if like the goblins and the spear goblins are grouped up against each other, or for example, I think it can also do quite a lot of damage against a bomber. So definitely there's some opportunity to use arrows efficient. So then the next one is the fireball. The fireball has a smaller radius, but has a lot more damage. Basically double the damage, but a little, like almost half the radius. But fireball can also be a very effective card, because it can, for example, take down barbarians, not on its own, but with a little help of your towers. barbarians will get annihilated by the fireball, resulting in, guess what, 1 elixir advantage for you. The fireball can also be used against the minion horde. It's a little bit harder, so I suggest using arrows for minion horde, but it's totally possible. A fireball can be used on a bomber, but that isn't that efficient. On a musketeer, it can also be used. So it's basically I would use fireball for more grouped amount of units. They're not really that efficient against one particular kind of unit, but like if there's a lot of units together, definitely use that fireball to gain an elixir advantage, because you can also gain an elixir advantage when your opponent plays multiple troops and then you can just take it down with one card. That's also a pretty great way to do it. And then obviously we have the rocket. The rocket, pretty expensive card if I have to say so, but it can deal a tremendous amount of damage. As you can see, 931 area damage. So basically this rocket, I wouldn't really suggest using it against troops, because in most cases the troops will have cost less than you have actually spent on the rocket. But the rocket is a great counter to spawner decks which constantly play these huts. Then you can just drop a rocket like this one on a grouped amount of huts, and then you take down multiple huts, do some damage to the tower, and it's totally worth it. So definitely use this rocket to take down huts, or for example drop it on the X-bow if you want to counter it. It's a really efficient way to do so. Okay, so then there are obviously some other cards, but more or less depends on the situation. For example, using many small units is often a good idea to, for example, counter a giant, a P.E.K.K.A, a giant skeleton, and in those cases you probably are going to gain some elixir advantage, but that really more or less depends upon the situation. Also, a great way to gain an elixir advantage is, for example, using a baby dragon against troops who can't even hit air units. So if your opponent is, for example, playing a bomber, and then you can just drop a baby dragon upon that, so the baby dragon easily takes down the bomber and still survives at full health, and basically you have played your baby dragon for only 1 elixir, and so your opponent will have to take down your baby dragon and will probably have to spend more than 1 elixir to take it down, so that will also result in an elixir advantage for you. Also, yeah, like the Valkyrie can also be very elixir efficient. Lately she got buffed, and using this Valkyrie to take down a large amount of troops is a very efficient way, because probably she won't receive that much damage and she will be able to take care of a lot of smaller units. So that's definitely a great way to build up your elixir advantage. Also, towers can be really great, but it's hard to say when. So if you play a tower and your opponent has played a lot of troops and he can take down your tower, and your tower destroys all the troops, you still have your tower up, you still have a big elixir advantage. But like, towers can be great, but it's hard to say when or against which kind of troops they will build up that elixir advantage. But so that is, by playing these troops, you will by implementing these tricks and playing these troops and spells, you will definitely be able to gain a lot of elixir advantage and use that to your advantage to win the game. Now, one way to build up an elixir advantage, which is often overlooked, is basically playing on your side of the battlefield. Because one thing you shouldn't forget is that you have 2 towers which you can use, and you should use them. So if they get a little bit of damage, that isn't bad. As long as they stay alive and you win the game, that's always counts. So getting a little bit of damage on your tower isn't that bad. So you should definitely use your tower to build up an elixir advantage. For example, if your opponent plays 3 goblins, in most cases your tower can take care of that. So just let your tower take care of that. Perhaps he might get like 1 attack from a goblin or something, but that is really nothing noteworthy. So then the goblins get taken down and you didn't spend any elixir, so that's 2 elixir in your pocket. So that is definitely a way you should try and use your towers to also build up that elixir advantage, because oftentimes your towers can just take care of it and just then do a large push on the other side, annihilate this tower, and just defend your tower, which is damaged with some buildings or something, and you should be fine. So that's also a great way to build up some Elixir Advantage. Also, like if your opponent attacks your king tower before your crown towers have been taken down, your king tower will come into action and will also start shooting enemies. So if, for example, if you can like bait your opponent by playing arrows or like do a fireball on your king tower, that is a great way to build up that Elixir Advantage, because then your king tower will come into the game, and whenever one of your towers is attacked, that king tower will also start shooting those enemies, so it will even be harder for your opponent to take down your other towers. So that's something, a little trick you can implement in your gameplay. So guys, that was everything I had to tell about this piece of Clash Royale strategy. If you'd like this, definitely give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to get updated on future Clash Royale videos. Thank you for watching, foxes. See you next time.